afternoon, everyone. It's Ali, Coram, and Ed Carson with a breakdown of the action for Tuesday, February 6th, where we saw gains across the board as indexes hold near highs. And we've got some stocks to take a look at underneath the surface, Ed, some notable movers today. What do you have on tap for us?
Yeah, three stocks that showed different kinds of earnings reactions, all in buy areas, perhaps Palantir, BellRing Brands, and Varonis.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at those three stocks, but first let's analyze the major indexes. The NASDAQ today up less than 0.1%. The S&P 500 up 0.2% today. The Dow up almost 0.4%. In the Russell 2000 taking the lead today up 0.7%. Ed, your thoughts on today's action?
Yeah, I mean, it's like this market does not want to go down. And there were some stocks like Nvidia reversed from highs and it came off lows, and then AMD came down, some other names, some of the AI plays, but they paired losses, and here we go, right at highs. Pausing for a few days really isn't the worst thing in the world because we were getting close to extended. So not so bad in that regard. Really impressive. Not a whole lot of buying opportunities. I think David Ryan and IBD Live made a good point, saying that a lot of the buying opportunities out there have been off of earnings, and sometimes it'll go really strong. But when you run up like this on and on and on, there's not a whole lot of things available right now. So, but nonetheless, I mean, if you're in stocks, they've generally been working, and so it's still been a very strong market.
Yeah, well said, Ed. Let's also get your thoughts on the S&P 500 action.
Pretty much the same thing. This is holding right below record highs, just every once in a while taking a break, but it's been cruising along.
And we'll take a look at blue chips and small caps. Here's a look at the Dow and inside day here near highs. And the Russell leading the gains today, still battling for some support right around the 50-day line.
Yeah, there was some breadth today, but clearly you can just look at the Russell and you can see that breadth has been an issue in 2024 after seeming to finally get that breadth in the late 2023.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look at the 10-year treasury yield coming off a bit. So perhaps that helping small caps today, Ed?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, it's sort of reverting back into that range. There were some strange things going on that brought it down. So maybe we hold in here. So that's an interesting level to be holding.
Okay. And let's, speaking of breadth, here's a look at RSP up 0.6% on the day. So outpacing the S&P 500, and QQEW up 0.2%, beating the NASDAQ composite, Ed.
Yeah, so there's a few names. So there's a little bit more strength, not a whole lot more. But even when, these have held up reasonably well as well. It's really the small caps that have really been struggling. Some of the big caps in general seem to be doing well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of earnings movers, let's go to Palantir. A strong close here at up almost 26% on the day. And a lot of strength here, getting back above that round number at 20. But this one would have been kind of hard to hold heading into the report if you trade in the IBD style.
I think it would have been really hard. And there were some other names, and maybe you could just call up SYM for a moment, because it had some similarities in terms of, and this one tumbled. Okay, it tumbled. So you can go in, everything's fine. Oh, look, you'd have to be smart. You should buy Palantir. No, I mean, this can happen. We didn't know. So Palantir gapped up, went over the 50-day line, got above all this resistance. In fact, it actually got to a 2-year high. So it cleared everything. And closed right at that level, basically. So, that could be, technically would be a buy point, officially could have bought it. Maybe now what you might want to wait for is see if it can consolidate for a few days, maybe form some kind of high handle or shelf, and, just pause a little bit. They had some positive earnings, positive on the commercial side, especially. That seems to be their growth area. So, really impressive. I think this was the strongest volume of all time. So there is real power here, but that seems to be the kind of things, and it's hard to get into that if you're not already in it. If you didn't buy it back in last spring, it would have been hard to jump into this.
Exactly. Yeah. So in terms of the kind of action we're looking for, if it can repeat what it did previously, I mean, this run last November didn't last very long, but it did, after a 20% move, tighten up over the next couple of days. It also did that last May, a big move on earnings, up 23%. So not a 30% move, but 20 to 23% tightened up over the next couple of days, and we saw a nice move over the next couple of weeks. So we'll have to see if that can happen again for Palantir. And now let's take a look at BR. This is BellRing Brands. A little bit of a volatile day on earnings. It was up at one point, down at one point, closed about mid-range, ultimately down about 1.2% and right around a buy point, Ed.
Yeah, so that came down. It's a little disappointing that it closed below. I mean, it did close sort of in the middle of that range. And that's if breakouts haven't been powerful, often what happens is we've seen them come up and then sort of like wilt off a little bit. And some of that's the nature of the market being sort of sideways over the last couple of weeks, sort of. So sometimes you go up and then, oh, we're going to pull back. So we've definitely seen some of the recent buying opportunities struggle. I mean, this is just struggling. I mean, it's not, I mean, it could just takes a couple of things. One more protein shake and this stock is back up into a buy zone. So I don't want to make too much of it. It's been acting pretty well so far. In a nice run ahead of that, before the consolidation. But that's just something to note, is that there are these things that aren't that breakouts, unless they're really powerful, have had a little bit more of a mixed track record I'd say in the past 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. And let's also take a look at VRNS. This is Varonis Systems in the database software group, closing up 6.7%, around 48.60 after topping the $50 mark in the session intraday, but it is above a potential buy point here, Ed. Also heavy volume, and the weekly chart here, I think, is what looks particularly interesting.
Yeah, you can see it's sort of been consolidating, didn't want to go down at all, bouncing from that 10-week line. I think, when it cleared those highs from a few weeks ago, that would have been a chance to get it. It's still in range. It came off highs, but you could be buying it here. It's probably around, well, it's probably about 7% above its 10-week line. Okay, it's 8%. So you could buy it here or wait to see if it pauses a little bit. Again, just
Mhm.
this is a good group. The relative strength line is right around 52-week high. So again, because whereas other stocks that are consolidating, they're going to often, with the market generally heading higher, those RS lines coming down, but this one really wasn't going down at all. So that's something to note in that regard. I am curious about 2024. I'll see if that changes. That would be something to note. If there's a big decline, I don't know what is going on that front. It's supposed to bounce back the following
Mhm.
year, but that's one thing to note. But it definitely was a positive reaction to earnings.
It was, and a really impressive volume profile here too on the weekly chart, with so many big blue spikes there and no above average red spikes except for one in October. Okay, now we've got to take a look at some of the earnings winners and losers in the after hours session. Let's start with Elf Beauty, because if we take a look at the weekly chart here, Ed, it's off the charts. The stock started running before many did in summer of 2022, so well before the broad market bottomed, and it was extended from a proper buy point heading into the report. Looks like this stock is down about 3% after hours, closing today 9% above the 21 day. So still would be holding well above that if it opens lower by about 2.5–3% tomorrow. Let's now go to Snap Ed, which forming a base heading into the report tonight, and a nice run up in November, December before the base formed. But oh snap, that does not look
Yeah.
good. Down 25%.
Yeah, it looks like they missed on revenue. I don't know. I don't know what their users were like. Again, it was peaking just above this little, entry. So you go, oh, if this had risen, people would have said you should have bought before earnings. Well, this is why it's really risky. It's one thing if you want to do earning option. Yeah, this was not doing well. Just to give a few other names, and Alpha's come well off lows already. It's not as you say. It was much worse, but Fortinet looks a lot better. That had been struggling for quite a while. It's making its way back up 13%. That's a positive sign for a lot of cyber security firms. AZEC is another one. That's in the building products that it's sort of paused right around a buy point. So again, a lot of earnings related names making moves, and that always happens, but that seems to be where we're really relying on for buying opportunities. But uh, then how much more can they advance? It's that's just something, but a lot of action after the close.
Okay. And TENB, that was another one that you had mentioned, Ed, also in the security software group, up a little less than 3%. So, in terms of how CrowdStrike is doing, up 1% after hour, this is the group leader, arguably, along with Palo Alto, up 2.5%, trading tightly. Could be closing in on that 350 level come tomorrow. And then in terms of moving in sympathy with Snap, Meta doesn't seem like a whole lot of action after hours here for the likes of Meta, Ed.
Yeah, and it was. I wonder what Pins looks like because they have earnings. See, Meta's already out of the way, but
Mm.
Pins, you can stick a pin in that one. Maybe not a, not a knife in it, but you've stuck a pin in it. That's 5%. That was the risk. It was like, oh, look at it moving on Meta. Well, Snap is coming, and well, we'll have to see what Pins could be great. It could be terrible. Uh, but that's why you have to look at what rivals are doing with earnings.
Yes, so well said, Ed. Okay, well, thanks for that quick little preview. Now we have a list of a couple of stocks to check in on tomorrow for positive earnings reactions. Fortinet and AZEK in particular will be interesting to see how they open tomorrow. So we'll have those on our list for IBD Live, and we hope everyone joins us, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details on that. We'll see you there in the morning starting 10 minutes before the opening bell. And for the first 90 minutes of trade, looking forward to that. And we'll also see you right back here tomorrow after the close.